Hello and welcome to the Pirates Fan Forum, you crazy, crazy people. I'm your host, Gary Morgan. With me, as always, my good friend Jim Stam. How you doing, man?
Dude, it's funny. I got kicked out of the office where we both, my wife and I work. I'm downstairs in our dining room, and the irony in that, and God, I know a lot of people listen to this, so they don't necessarily see the live YouTube thing. But I'm just gonna scroll my screen over and tell you what Ben just finished building and why it's so appropriate right now is he just finished building the Titanic out of quasi Legos, some cheap knockoff Lego brand. And I thought, man, is that not perfect for a show right now to be sitting down in front of that? So there you go. Anyways, it was the Titanic, everybody.
Yeah, so we kind of ducked the subject for the duration of this terrible losing streak on this show. We had Murph on to talk trade deadline. We had, Lastings Millage last week, so we didn't make him talk about current day Pirates, which was glorious, actually. It was a nice break from it. I'm so happy they don't play tonight, Jim. I think that's where I'm at right now. I need a break from the team. I just need a break from seeing the same expressions from the same people doing the same damn stupid things that I see for, when they get in stretches like this, they're unwatchable because there's not one facet of the team that is something you look forward to. Maybe Brian Reynolds continuing to not stink.
Yeah. It's just one of those things too, where like when you get in this type of a slide, and this happens in all sports, like Mike Tomlin refers to it as like popcorn, which is it's popping up everywhere. Something somewhere goes wrong, and it's enough to make you lose games.
But they can't even put a patch on their jersey at this point without getting sued.
It's hard to make some of this stuff up with them.
Yeah. I was watching the game the other night, man. I just went, it's just sad. I didn't even know what else to say. It's just sad what's happened to them. It has been it's been everything we feared and more going through this stretch of really, really good teams. But man, they couldn't have shown more clearly they don't belong in that echelon of teams. They do not belong in that playoff race.
Right. And I think that maybe that's the biggest reality check out of all this, Gary, is that, we're in our little NL Central bubble thinking that, we're doing some things. And then you realize whenever you play teams that are trending in the right direction with real talent that made some really good moves at the deadline, it probably shouldn't be this bad, but maybe you shouldn't be surprised that you get knocked back down into reality a little bit, because I think that's essentially what we just went through.
Yeah, it really felt like a reckoning. It did. It really kind of felt like it felt like, that the kid is like feeling like he's ready to sit at the adult table at Thanksgiving, and he sits down, and then the uncle that's like barely not a teenager comes in, and he gets to move up to the table instead and get back there, kid. Like that's what it felt like. Arizona right now is on all cylinders. It's crazy. Philadelphia has stumbled out of the gate after the All-Star break. I don't know if you've seen how badly they've done, but Atlanta is stumbling. It's crazy, like some of the teams, but that's no excuse for the Pirates. What they've done is far worse. It's rivaling the White Sox as far as ineptitude goes at this point. So they're not even lottery eligible this year. So
yeah, listen, and then you ask yourself, how are they going to finish this, right? Because there's a lot of talk out there about Shelton's lost the locker room or players have quit. And Gary, I don't necessarily buy any of that. I don't think that is what's happening. Do I think that things have a tendency to snowball? Absolutely, and I think we're seeing that. But what it really comes down to for me is, as we've just gone through it, which is we got our butts kicked by better teams with better players. And to me, it just lets you know how much further they have to go to be considered legitimate players in anything.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I wanted to point out too is I think a lot of what's really been kicking the team's butt is that the guys that are supposed to be doing good things aren't. You know, like David Bednar has had an awful season. Mitch Keller's had a really rough last couple outings here. Paul Skeens looked human last time. You know, like I think like we're starting to see a few guys maybe have a little slip up themselves. You know, Rowdy Tellez has turned it around to his credit, but he's still only got 9 home runs and he can't run because he's like too hurt to run. I mean,
yeah.
Andrew McCutchen can't run.
Even when Rowdy's healthy, the running's not a strong point. So
no, but at least if he hits a double, he's going to get a double. You know, it's going to take a real good throw to keep him from getting a double when he's healthy. Right now, he's got to hit a triple almost, you know, or book roll, you know, like it's awful.
I think like you could trace back a lot of this, obviously. The bullpen has just never, ever given them the stability that they've needed, right? Like it just, you know, from after the start that they had, and then it's just been up, down, left, right, guys hurt, guys coming back, guys seemingly healthy but aren't producing. Colin Holderman and David Bednar enter some secret pact of forgetting how to pitch in high leverage situations. I mean, it's just like that to me has been the biggest constant is the bullpen. Like I think we're probably still having the same conversation, but maybe not to the extreme that we're having it had the bullpen not just been, you know, so riddled with bad things happening to them this year.
Right. And ain't nothing makes people think a manager's dumb more than a bullpen being real bad, because it's impossible to ever use them without looking stupid. Let's take a break, and when we come back from it, let's just have a wide-ranging conversation. You want to talk about getting rid of the GM? Hey, it's on the deck. You want to talk about firing this coach? Okay, let's move into it. Let's talk about the ups and the downs and the whys and why shouldn't theys, and then let's talk a little bit about the realities of this roster, because it's going to look pretty similar in 2025. My bet is, man.
Right. And I think too, like Gary, like the comments, people are going to say things. Keep them sane. That's all I'm saying is like a lot is on the table here, or should be. But let's stay within the realm of reality as well.
Yeah. All right. Here we go.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports. Promised it. We're going to get into this stuff. First, Ryan Lytle says he's jealous of San Diego's bullpen. I had the exact same thought watching them, actually. It was, yeah. I don't even know what to say. It was dominant. Arizona's was pretty good, too.
Yeah.
Both those teams did a lot to help themselves.
I was just going to say is like San Diego at the deadline made a big attempt to bolster their bullpen. And boy, does that start showing in August whenever you inject that kind of life into your ball club, because it gets you out of a lot of jams. It really does.
So here, let's start with this question. Joseph says, what's the chances Kelly could be promoted to manager should Shelton be fired? I think the best way to answer this for me is really every decision that Derek Shelton makes, for the most part, when asked about clubhouse decisions and guys playing time and lineups and defensive alignments and who does what here and what roles guys play, he and Donnie Kelly make all those decisions together. So if you want somebody that does what Shelton did and think he has a better gut, that's what you're going to get, because they're in lockstep on most of that stuff. So that's up to you. I'm sure he'd be fine. I think he'll be sought after this offseason somewhere. But, I think they have more house cleaning to do than sticking with an in-house candidate to replace a head coach that you have to move on to at this stage. Now, that's my take, because I think if you replace the head coach, you replace them all.
I was just going to say, like, it sounds to me like if you're really truly going to want to change directions a little bit, don't you want to change directions? You know what I mean? Like, to go to somebody that has a lot of input and has been mired in this same situation as everybody else, to me, that doesn't solve much. You still have the same players. You still have the same philosophies. You still have the same owner and GM. So could you change that? Yeah. Do I see that making any kind of noticeable difference? I don't, Gary. I really don't.
Yeah, and I think for me, if I want to move on from Derek Shelton, I know I'm going to get somebody in the mold of Derek Shelton. I might get somebody that has more experience than Derek Shelton, but it's going to be a system guy. It's going to be somebody that does what Ben Cherington in the analytics department want the coach to do. I'm really replacing the guy's gut and his feel.
Right.
That's it. I'm or his usage of guys, like his ability to go, nah, this guy's hot. F the analytics. I want this guy in my lineup today. Like that sort of thing. Maybe you're replacing that. That's the hope, because you are going to get somebody, I think, idealistically, very similar.
Well, and would that person, say Kelly, even have the latitude to do those things? You know what I mean? Like when things are already driven analytically in the first place, I don't know that there's enough shift in either personality or resume there that changes much of that.
I don't know. I think it would have to kind of depend on the coach. Like if it's somebody that's got some experience and he's kind of dealt with a few different GMs before and he don't really care necessarily about this being his forever job. Yeah, I think you'd get a guy that would come in and every once in a while say no.
But he'd have some resume to him to do that, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's what you'd almost have to go do, is get somebody that got a little bit of a resume. It's what they did before when they went and got Clint Hurdle, really. He had just had some playoff success with Colorado, so he comes in and he offers a little bit of more of a push. I mean, they tried it with Jim Tracy too. He just didn't have nearly as much success in his track record as Hurdle. So I don't know. It's not like they won't go and try to do it at some point. I just don't know if now's the time. I think Dayon is one. Like, boy, they look super comfortable together. Like Cherington and Shelton, like showing up to Steelers camp.
Well, Gary, you mentioned a word there, comfortable. Is there too much comfortability in an organization like the Pirates when you've flat out told everybody, oh, this is going to be a long process. This is going to be a long process. And so does everybody kind of understand that almost to a degree where there's not much edge within the organization? And I think you could make that argument that, like, sometimes it's good to be, I'm not talking about going in and screaming in someone's face, because I don't think that works in sports, and certainly doesn't in baseball. It's not going to help you hit. It's not going to help you hit breaking balls. But just some sort of edge or expectation that status quo is not good enough and nobody's job should be safe. Players, management, nothing.
Yeah, I get that. And I would think, like, for the most part, everybody in the room that doesn't have an extension probably knows that, to a degree on their own. This guy's not a yeller. I don't think, for the most part, there are too many of those anymore in professional sports. I know we all want Tommy Lasorda out there running around yelling, and Jimmy Leland, and that's the kind of Sparky Anderson. That's the kind of, like, guy I remember too. But I just don't think that's what coaches are anymore.
Right.
Almost. I do think they need to feel the room better, though. Like, you need to be in the room a little bit more, I think, when you don't have vocal leaders that are actually on your field. You don't have a vocal leadership group in that team outside of one guy who came in here and stunk out loud for 2 months, before he finally, like, figured out what he was doing, and Rowdy.
Yeah.
They don't have a vocal guy in there. Like, a coach needs to be that. You need to be able to fill in that big brother role, and you need to be able to understand what's happening in that room. Like, they lose certain guys, they lose their minds. There's glue guys that they need. I don't know. It doesn't feel like a healthy room right now.
Yeah, it's just that kind of silent expectation, I think, that I'm talking about, where it's understood that, like, nobody needs to be super comfortable and just assuming things aren't going to change at all. And I worry about that with organizations like the Pirates, because they're known to just let it ride out to the point where it's past time. And I think, like, when you look at, personally, if it was me, I would be changing GMs way quicker than I would be changing head coaches. That's just my.
I kind of think, again, you do that, it changes everything. So I think the higher you go, you're not just going to chop off the head. When you chop off the head in a baseball organization, you open everything up. And so if they get rid of the GM, everything underneath it's going. Like, that's not even a thought. Yeah. To me, anyway. But, like, I don't know. I watch, like, this team, and I just see 10 straight games of nobody puts their foot down, and they should at least be at that point where they have that ability as a unit to come together and do that. The lineup actually looks weaker than it has at any point this entire season right now. And maybe it's because we've come to the realization about a few guys, or I can't imagine it's because we miss Nick Gonzalez that much. I mean, he was really a nice bat. He had cooled off a little bit towards the end there, but he was nice. He was plugging a roll. Is one bat all that we're missing that's making us feel like this lineup just doesn't fit anymore?
Yeah. If Nick Gonzalez is the reason why you couldn't hold it together, then you weren't holding much together in the first place. And that's not a knock on Nick Gonzalez. He's, if nothing else, provided super timely at-bats, scored runs or drove in runs when they absolutely had to have something. And that can't be discounted because they've struggled in that area, and he was at least willing to chip in. But yeah, I mean, can you even point to one thing that says, man, we just lost Aaron Judge, it hasn't been that. It hasn't been any one thing. It's just
Right.
It feels like a lot of stuff has just bubbled to the surface all at once.
Yeah, it's like part-time role players like Connor Joe getting overexposed for the second straight year and falling off a cliff in the second half, right? You start to get excited, like, well, maybe Connor Joe's a guy we got to stick around with. Now, here you are again, kind of like, I don't know. You certainly can't think of him as that first place placeholder, like that we were kind of hoping he might be. So again, first base is going to be a gaping hole again. Mm-hmm. I know, Andy. I know. Just calm down, everyone. I'm trying to keep my expectations realistic for a kid that just ain't hitting the year. That's all.
Well, we just saw what O'Neill Cruz went through, right? I mean,
yeah.
So, and he's no different. We don't know what that's going to look like. I think what's absolutely frightening, Gary, is that to be this far into whatever this is that what if they wouldn't have got Joey Bart? Like that shouldn't be something we're talking about as being like such a huge bailout that they got. And credit to Sherrington, they went out and they made it happen. But when you have to ask that kind of question, where would they be? My goodness,
I get it. But Joey Bart's been a good story, and hey, nice pickup. But it wasn't what we were hoping for. Like O'Neill Cruz is maybe half of what I think people hoped he would be offensively this year. Bryan Reynolds, I think, is probably borderline exceeded a few people's expectations this year. I bet, if people are really being honest, right? Ke'Bryan Hayes is a below replacement level player right now. Unless he has a glove in his hand. Like, he might as well wear his fielding glove to the plate. Because
have you ever been more resigned to an outcome of an at-bat than when Ke'Bryan Hayes is at the plate, especially with anything brewing?
This year, yeah. I mean, it's been very, very bad. And I mean, like, there's no plan to like put him on the IL. I mean, there's just nothing. I mean, they have guys that can field almost just as good. I really mean this at this point. I sometimes get excited when it might be Triolo at third. I'm like, oh, Jared's playing. He can't hit either, but like at least it's a different kind of looking can't hit. At least it's not that same exact ground ball. He'll get into one in line, one to left every once in a while and give you a halfie.
Yeah.
like
Ed says here, do like the White Sox and clean house. Do you really think that there's any chance that they do that right now after slogging through this 5 years and they're just going to turn around and do a whole big fire sale? They're not. No. They're not. And if fans are depressed now, if something like that were to happen, you'd have to take a number for the bridges in Pittsburgh for Pirate fans, like just to get in line to jump.
I mean, I wouldn't support it at all. For one thing, I think they've locked up some guys to contracts that, like, Ke'Bryan Hayes' contract alone is a good signing for even somebody that's just a defender. A normal team could afford $7 million a year without thinking about it, really. And if he even returns to the mean a little bit next year, which that's going to be the hope, they're not going to go out and sign a third baseman. I mean, like, it's going to be Ke'Bryan Hayes. I think we all know that. He's going to come back next year. You're going to hope you get more out of him. But I'm never going to entertain those. Like, if he can just pop 15 or 20, nope, I'm not even listening to that anymore. I mean, I'm expecting a glove, and anything I get beyond that is gravy. He's out of my projections entirely.
Yeah, I think if you're still hanging on to that, God bless you. um, but like you said, just expect the bare minimum, and anything that he bounces back to give you, you take it. But they've got, and that's the thing too, is like, it wouldn't really matter as much if Ke'Bryan was doing this if they were just in better shape around the diamond when it comes to offense. Like it becomes so much bigger of an issue because they just flat out either have guys that haven't played well enough or they haven't developed enough guys to offset it offensively.
I mean, we've only got one developed position player here. Like there's only one in all that time, and he happens to be the first one they picked. So, I mean, he was a college player, so I think maybe you could have expected him to get here a little bit earlier, but he kind of came up cooked when he came back the second time. He looked the part this time. I was enjoying watching him. I'm looking forward to him coming back. That's the only one. Henry Davis, you kind of hope for that same thing. Goes down there and starts doing different things. Looks like he is. He's starting to hit the ball to the other field a little bit. He's keeping the ball in the air a little bit more. He's getting under it. Still striking out. I think that's going to be part of his game. I really do. I don't know what to say about it. I mean, except for that Nick was a little bit worse last year.
Right. And if anything, speaking of bringing up Joey Bart again, at least you can point to somebody and say, okay, well, look, it's taken Joey Bart this long to figure out what kind of a hitter he can be and what kind of expectations you can have for someone. And he's exceeded them, quite frankly. But maybe Henry's never going to be that. Maybe he's just going to be a low average guy that hits some bombs. And that would be better than a catcher. You can live with that.
Yeah, I mean, so I think like there are some things that I think are coming pretty close to the league. I did see something that I wanted to talk about with you. The system rankings came out, and I saw one was like they had us 27th now, and I saw a new one today. I think it was Baseball America had us. I think it was 21st. So
20, but okay.
Okay, so 20 and 27. Again, I just want to make it real clear why I don't care about those things. I don't care about them when they're high. I don't care about them when they're low. And you know this, Jim. I talk about this all the time. The reason I don't, in this instance, give a crap about that is basically because it was only buoyed by Paul Skeens, Jared Jones, and Henry Davis. They all graduated off of that. And Termar started out the season early, and they dropped him. And once you get dropped down for the new draft class, that you're not going to climb back up it real quick. So like there's certain things that happen.
Absolute monster, almost season-long tear for something like that.
Yeah. Like the system ranking to me, it's not super important. Some of them are higher because they're teams that they just don't need their system. So they're just constantly like churning like at hell's gates trying to escape from AAA to get to the majors, like in Los Angeles, and even Boston to a degree has kind of built a little bit of a system like that where they're kind of fighting. That's why we were able to grab like Nick York, and Baltimore certainly has that. That's why we were able to get Billy Cook. So I like some of what they've brought in at the trade deadline. I think what's at the core here, Jim, is that the core we know is coming back, and I'm just afraid certain parts of it are starting to look maybe a little bit less than fresh. Like I am worried about Brian Hayes at this point. Not as a defender, not because I'm worried about paying $7 million, but because I am worried about him starting at third base and hitting the way he does. There has to be more. And to me, this isn't a contract you necessarily got to eat, but this is a guy that's going to find himself in a bench role if next year looks like this. It just has to, right?
He would hope that would be a conversation, but I don't know that the Pirates will look at it that way. They're paying him. I think they view it as a big contract. I think they'll play him. IKF certainly allows a little bit more, allowing some of that to play out. But I worry that they're just going to stick with him and hope that he figures it out again. I do, Gary.
Yeah, I think that too. And then I see things like this, worst qualified hitter in Major League Baseball right now. And it's true.
It is.
I don't know how you come back next year. This is as if I'm putting myself like in the role of GM. I'm going to come in next year at some point, and I'm going to tell you we expect to be in the playoffs next year. There won't be a competitive, or what they're going to say something along those lines. They expect to be in the playoffs next year. They'll have to up the ante a little bit because of what's happening right now. And I don't know how you show up for spring with a third baseman that, like we just said, is the worst qualified hitter in Major League Baseball. Continue to tell me that he's healthy enough to play. Keep trotting him out there 5-6 times a week, continuing to tell me he's healthy enough to play. And then watching him swing what looks like he's trying to swing a telephone pole. Because, I mean, his swing is completely slowed down. He's clearly laboring. He can't reach for balls to the left the way he used to. We're watching O'Neal Cruz even get the balls behind Brian Hayes. That never happens, right?
Right.
I don't know, Jim. There comes a point when everyone hits their Chris Davis moment.
Yeah, in a sense, they're fortunate that it isn't some massive, massive contract and he just completely bottomed out. I think, the funny thing is here, Gary, is they're still going to go into next year with having a pretty darn good starting rotation. So, I mean, like, you would hope you could build off that. And
you should be able to, right? And if they budget the way that we have been told they do, which means the money they make this year, they've had a lot more sellouts because of Skeens and everything. They should, and they got the Sheets patches now, right?
Well,
and the TVs.
Maybe until there's an injunction, but yeah,
they've already got a verbal agreement. They said so. Like, I'm sure they're fine. That they got the cables worked out. We know where they're going to be on TV. Probably, I guess they have an opt out or something, but they won't. I'm sure. So we'll have them on TV. They're making their money. They should know they have a little bit more next year. That's all I'm saying. If not, I'm not sure what we're doing because you have big holes. The best outfielder that we've had under Ben Cherington is Brian Reynolds, no doubt. Who's number 2, Jim? Think about it. It might be Jack Sawinski. You want to hear the other submissions I got from people on Twitter? Ben Gamel, Connor Joe, depending on how you look at him.
I thought of Connor Joe.
Like it gets his Palacios in the running for that. I mean, like, dude, it's bad.
Yeah. Well, I think too, Gary, is like look.
That's on a GM though. You spend if you can tell me that you can spend $10 million on a player, which you just did by signing Aroldis Chapman. All right. So from now on, you see a player that you think is worth $10 million. You should not go, that's crazy. The Pirates will never pay that because they might. They just did. Right. You could get an outfielder that can freaking hit for $10 million to come play here. You can do it real easy. That's on the GM and nobody else. That's not on Bob Nutting. That's on him. That's where I look at him, and I can directly say, you made a choice that I don't think is smart, because you've had this same hole for 4 years.
And I think too that's like maybe the my biggest criticism with whatever. Okay, your owner sucks. Okay, you don't compete payroll wise. You don't, all these things that baseball inherently makes it tougher on certain markets. It's just the idea that you never move off the idea that you think you'll be able to make it up or get it somewhere, or it's gonna work out. Like you can't always go on that side of things. You just cannot. And I'm not going to spend time bitching about payroll. I'm not. I'm just saying, but at some point, you have to inject some kind of dollars into known holes, especially when you're nearing a part where you start uttering words like competing. Like you have to supplement that at that point. And they're always on the side of, well, we think we're going to be able to cover it. We've got some options here. We think it's okay. How about just sewing something up for once in case it doesn't work out?
Like, instead of like getting 3 options that might work, let's get one that will. Instead of buying 3 things for $5 million each that kind of sort of can do some things, let's buy one player for 15 that can. That to me is a change that he can make, because I loved having Aroldis Chapman around this year. Okay. Thank goodness, honestly, with the way David Bednar and Colin Holderman have turned into pumpkins here towards the end of the season. But we could have had a $10 million player on this team in the outfield that would have helped. That's all I'm saying. That's not a superstar. That's just a consistent baseball player. That's all I'm asking for.
Right.
That's twice as good as Michael A. Taylor. FYI. That's what I want.
I think that's the thing too, is like, as a GM, you have to recognize when your line of thinking has to change a little bit. If you stay stuck in the same type of approach that you started with early on in this process, I just don't think you're ever going to get anywhere over any kind of a hump. And if he's not willing to do that at this point, when it comes up to this offseason, trust me, they've got a lot of things to work out, right? There's some real holes here that need to be plugged. But man, start looking at guys that are more sure things. You have to be able to do that.
I agree. And I think, like, even the excuse that we were talking a little bit before we came on, and I said, like, if we started talking about the GM and why it's taken so long, I was probably going to get forced into talking about, like, I didn't feel like they had very much that was real good to move. Like, Joe Musgrove had to have that good season here before he got moved. I mean, he wasn't the greatest option for anybody, and he had an injury history. And they got some pretty good players for him. That, I think, is the only big move he's made that might have some fruit. That's a problem. That's a big problem.
For sure.
I don't know how to fix that. That said, I can't sit here and tell you Josh Bell was worth a lot more than what they got from the Nationals when he was moved. They sold low on him. Maybe it would have been smarter to hold on to him for the offseason, start the season with him, hope he goes on one of those Josh Bell tears, and then sell him at the trade deadline. Maybe, but don't you think Miami tried to play that game too? And then they ended up just waiving him.
Right. Well, yeah. And I think too, like, if you look at, probably started with Garrett Cole and what they got in return there, and the 3 guys they got back, just, it wasn't if you're going to move anybody of any kind of a known commodity / that caliber, boy, you can't just look at how Juan Soto got moved and what they got in return for him in San Diego and even in Washington.
Juan Soto is like a crop duster for prospects. He just like flew across the country a couple times, just spraying off prospects around the league in his wake. I mean, that's unbelievable how many prospects moved around because of that one guy.
A lot of big names attached to
Washington almost completely rebuilt their team on it. Yeah.
So, man, you know, I think it started probably with Cole, and then they never really had any names to really collect enough talent. And then when you start missing in your own drafts, that's how you get to the point where we're sitting here talking about rankings. I don't really care about the rankings, Gary. It's just whenever I look at names and I want to look at players you've got in the system offensively, I just need to see something. Like, you know, and they're in trouble there a little bit too.
Yeah. I think we got to take another break, but before we do, let's just both say what we think here. Cherington here still next year? I say yes.
Are you saying what we want to happen or
what will happen?
Oh, yeah, I don't think they're changing anything.
I think there's a chance if they don't pull out of this tailspin the right way, Shelton's going to coach his way out of town on this train that he's got the team on right now.
Assuming it's not a cataclysmic collapse of 18 of 20, I think he'll stick. Andy Haynes might go. He sounds like a guy you could that could be the sacrificial lamb or actually legitimate lamb in this.
Yeah, I think we both felt the same way last year about Andy Haynes. We really did. You know, I think we both.
They're always a year late with some of this stuff.
Well,
too.
yeah, we didn't want him hired either. So I mean, like, Andy Haynes has been a problem for a long time, and I think what we're finding just in the system at every level, too many strikeouts, just way too many strikeouts. It's high. It's high for like even their levels. It really is. And since the way the Pirates are structured, he oversees all of that. It's all on him. So that's got to go. I'm sorry. You can't fail that epically that many times in a row. Have no resume backing you before you got here of like having gone through a journey and turned it around somewhere. No, enough.
Well,
pull the trigger and change course.
Well, okay, so let's take a break, and when we come back, are we going to talk about, let's see how they can dig themselves out of this, or how we want them to finish, or what they need to do the rest of the way?
Yeah, let's talk about what they need to do the rest of the way, because that could go several directions.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
Welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports. It's time to talk about a little bit more of our I want to finish up that conversation just a tiny bit, because I think Derek Shelton was not on a hot seat this year. I think he and Ben Cherington really are pretty tied at the hip. I think they're close.
Very.
I think he's loyal. And you ran a poll on, let's see, I want to read August 2nd on Twitter. I just want to remind people, because it's only right now August 15th.
13 days.
On August 2nd, he ran a poll. Let's do a poll. Plain and simple. Do you believe Derek Shelton has done a good job of managing this team so far in 2024? 69% of the 655 votes.
Yeah, we're not talking 37 votes here.
Yeah, this isn't like his uncles and aunts like jumped on. Like this is like enough of yins, right?
Vince Sherrington on his burner.
69% of you said yes. 31% of you said no. I guarantee this would be flip-flopped at least now.
Oh, it'd be worse.
At least. But that's how quickly we change. Baseball changes don't come like that. Baseball changes are more like planting a tree and picturing what it might look like in your yard 10 years from now. And if you're smart, the roots don't grow into your cellar and the branches don't hang over your eaves. And and you're insured from lightning strikes because it's right there and it can crush your living room. That's the reality of making changes in baseball. That's why it's so long. Like they've made a lot of changes in the farm system over the years, but you can't attribute any of them to anyone because it's a system. It's like a new president gets elected and there's this whole underbelly of Washington that never changes, that actually runs everything. That's baseball.
Yep.
Like this stuff just changes hands. Nobody wants to go down and change the towels, so that guy's staying. Like
sure.
It's just the way it is. Like that sort of stuff when we talk about like change this, change that, they did. They just changed the farming director last year. It'll be 5-6 years before you know if that was a good move. And it'll probably be the next GM that gets credit for it. Like, so I don't know. I'm not ready to make a change at GM yet, if only because I'm not ready to go through somebody else's new vision. I want to try to, if you want to call it put lipstick on a pig, fine. I want to pretty this thing up and shove it out there as a show pony next year with some new shiny beakers bolted right on top of it. Well, that's what I want to do.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I don't disagree with that. I think my only caveat to that would be is that if he's not adaptable to the situation, like if he and Gary, this is the part that bothered me too, is like these conflicting reports about, well, they had money to spend, he just didn't spend it. Or nope, there was nothing there. He had to unload Martin Perez before they could even sign off on anything. Well, so which one is it? I have a hard time believing Sherrington is just sitting there with money to spend and wouldn't want to do it. I find that hard to believe. Everybody has their own sources, whatever.
Let's talk about the deadline a little bit, though, because in our eyes, there was only a couple big fish, right? There was Luis Robert. I think we all kind of knew that they didn't really want to move him because the buzz even died almost a week and a half before the deadline, right? Mm-hmm. Then you had Jazz, and the Yankees actually reacted really quickly on Jazz and took him. Like there wasn't much of a bidding war, was there? Like they just snapped in and got him a couple days before it. They were like, no, we're not going to let this go to that day.
Right.
So they got it done. Kudos to them. And it looks like, unfortunately, he's out for the season now. And I think could even miss most of next season. I think he's having Tommy John surgery, it looks like. Which that sucks. But there was Randy Arozarena. There was Yandy Diaz out there. Pirates weren't really in on them. I liked the Isaiah Kiner-Falefa deal. I actually think long term, like next year, that's a great deal. I like having him around, even if he's just an upgrade over Connor Joe. So I was happy with that move.
Yeah, I like him as a ball player. I really do.
And Brian De La Cruz was a shot. The thing is, they immediately have to decide: do we want this guy to go to arbitration next year? I don't know.
Well, and Gary, maybe this is part of it too with Sherrington, is like going on the safe side with those things. Is like, let me ask you this question and anybody that's listening, which is, had they added maybe Randy Arozarena and maybe a Tanner Scott and done that, are we sitting here having a different conversation? Would that have been enough in 8 one-run games to go 4-4? I don't know, but it always seems like they're on the side of, we'll hope we'll hope that it works out instead of just legitimately doing it.
The outfield, I think, is what frustrates me the most, because there just hasn't been anything real promising coming for a long time. I thought they were, and it turns out very right, dismissive with some of what they already had, like Travis Swaggerty and Cal Mitchell and Canaan Smith-Njigba, even that they brought in early on in the process. I felt like they were very quick to just brush them aside, like not really give them too much of an opportunity up here. Hindsight, I mean, it seems like it hasn't really taken off for anybody after. So you can't say they were wrong, but where are your hitters going? Like, you're not developing any. I mean, you have to be. If I'm Ben Cherington and I'm looking at my system, I have some big questions about my international scouting. I don't know when the last time we had a real big win was out of that. And I think Luis Ortiz is the only one here from this guy.
Right.
So,
and they've poured money, and they've poured some money into that stuff.
They spend as much as you can. So, I mean, you're spending that money. I would think, like, if you're a miserly guy, you probably want it spent wisely, right? Like, you should be getting a few wins. I mean, there should be some guys peeking through, like, making waves a little bit, that you hear about at the Altoona level by now.
Right. Yeah. There's been enough time where you should start saying, okay, they've got a pretty good handle on this. There are some names they're getting out of that, and there just hasn't been.
Yeah. And you get the occasional, like, surprise guy out of that, and I haven't seen anything. So, like, that frustrates me. I'm frustrated by the outfield situation. It's been a problem since he got here. I understood during the bad years going with, like, the trash that he did with, you want a bad record so you can get a high draft pick. I get it. Fine. I don't like it, but I get it.
Right.
I guess, like you and I argued at the time, bring in somebody better so that you have somebody better to trade at the deadline. Like,
yeah, you could spend a little money to replenish that farm system, which you so desperately are going to rely on, right?
So I mean, when we always say there's other ways to do this stuff, I think that's what we're trying to say. There's other ways to do this stuff. You can be cheap and do things smart. The Rays go out and take chances on guys, and when they turn them around, they sell them. Like, that's what they do.
Right.
We immediately go like, oh, extend him. He's the like, I'm just saying, like, if you want to be a heartless team that doesn't spend money, you need to be a lot smarter than they are. And if you aren't going to be smarter, then you need to spend money. You have to do one of those things. You can't do both. I don't think that it's time to pull the plug on this experiment, because I don't even think we are to the point where Bob Nutting's like, gee, I wonder what the next step is. I think he's very much so aware of what Ben Cherington's trying to do right now. So, I don't know.
Look, 40 some games left, right around 40, 42, whatever. Talk about being smart. What is smart the rest of the way? What should the expectations be?
I've heard some people say you want to go all kids, get Davis and Cook and York up here and everything, and do all that, and get rid of, like, Grandal and Taylor, and I even saw somebody say Connor Joe, and move up the kids. I think there's some merit to that. I'll entertain it if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. And then there's the I do think, like, if it might be time to get a look at some of these guys. I think Henry's had enough of a stay to satisfy me, which I'm always of the mindset of letting him stay as long as you possibly can. But yeah, I would bring Henry up. I would give a couple of these other guys a look. I think you want to be smart about Jared Jones and Paul Skeens the rest of the way.
So your Operation 2025.
I am. I do. Even if it's losses, going out and trying to win right now with some of the same stuff you've been doing, I don't know that makes me feel any better. You know what I mean? I think I know what this team is. I think I know where they're going to need to improve. And the wins, if they're coming by way of, Michael Taylor runs into another home run and wins a game for them, does that really answer anything? I just don't think it does.
I'll tell you what I'd like to hear. I'd like to hear the GM come out and say, yeah, that losing streak sucked, but I want to hit 500 this year. I want this team to fight like hell and go out and get 500. Learn how to win. O'Neal, fix this crap. I mean, the mindless stuff on the field just got to go, brother.
The standard of
yep. We're going to make good decisions on the base paths. We're going to, you lay it out and you say, listen, Shelton, your job is on the line. I want at least 500. You did not have a massive injuries to critical players. You certainly had replacements for what you did lose, your starting pitching. You had replacements that helped quite a bit for quite a long time. I mean, I went and got you a couple of bats to make up for losing Polanco or not Polanco, Palacios and Gonzalez.
I didn't.
You lost.
Yeah,
you lost a rookie and a Roll 5 pick from last year, and I went and got you two currently playing Major League Baseball players to replace them. You can say whatever you want about what their futures are and whether they're good hitters or not. He went and got replacement Major League Baseball players. If I'm him, I'm in that room going like, what happened? Because you better at least deliver 500. And I don't expect this to be in the public, but that's what I want the GM doing. That's what I want him to do, is challenge the room and the players. And I want the coaches to challenge the players. You want a job here? This is a 500 team.
Some kind of an expectation in a bar, right? That at this point, certain things are not acceptable. And it's certainly not going to come from within that locker room with the type of players that they have. They've got too many young guys, and the guys that are super established are not those types of players that are going to do that stuff. And you can't just ask Brian Reynolds to turn into something he's not, as far as being a drill sergeant or anything like that. So, yeah, I mean, it'd be. Do I believe anything Bob Nutting says? No. But would I love to hear Bob Nutting just say, hey, you know what? We're not where we want to be. Just say something as simple as that to let everybody down below know, okay, it's time to tighten things up. We have to tighten things up.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on Derek Shelton's lucky comment, because that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And I'm usually real tolerant about those PR disasters that they tend to step in all the time, because I understand they're coming from a place of subterfuge. They're trying to be evasive.
Right.
This, to me, was probably the first time that I actually let myself start to consider it's time to fire him. Because I think after that stretch, to come on and act like you were a bounce or two away from just utter failure, Like you had the town buzzing. You really did. They had the town buzzing. They did.
Oh,
I don't think a lot of us believed that it was going to go anywhere, but a lot of us at least loved being there within reach.
Yeah, and everybody was realistic about that stretch. They knew it was going to be tough.
Yeah, we all knew it was going to be hard. I don't think any of us thought they were going to win 10 out of 10 or something. But you lose that many games in a row and you come back and you start talking about luck. No.
A bad bounce.
Yeah, I can't have that. That's not luck when you have people not hustling. It's not luck when you have guys striking out 14 times in a game. You know, it's not luck when they face a pitcher that they all ought to know really, really well, and not a single one of them can hit him, and he looks like he maybe lost about 10 years of age from the trade. Yeah. There's trouble. And like, I want the coach to kind of get his arms around it. And I wanted to hear a little bit of a battle plan. I'm not saying I needed a Gettysburg address or something, but like, you don't come back and tell me that you didn't get lucky. You come back and tell me how you're going to make your own luck.
Right.
What are you going to change? And if it's, hey, from now on, you know, you don't hustle to second. I mean, and you don't have an active medical case going on like Rowdy or Andrew McCutchen, you better hustle. I don't care if you never see another one of your home runs the rest of the time you play here.
Yeah.
Hustle. Everybody. Like that stuff shouldn't be happening. Diving for balls when you have 2 outs and a runner at first, instead of pulling up on it and making sure that run doesn't score. Dumb crap. Not backing up your base when on the throw. Like, you get a good fielder like IKF in here, and it really highlights exactly what this team doesn't do. All the things that he does because he's so well coached. I mean, it's brutal.
It is. And I think too, like that's just the thing is, like, when you hear Shelton come out and say what he did, and Josh with a great stat there about the Pirates in 1-run games, you know, that's the difference. That's the difference. And if you're not going to hold guys accountable about little things in 1-run games when you're playing this many, and I think they've played, if not the most, they're up near the top for 1-run games. The little things matter. Look, if you're the Padres and you want to play a little sloppy, you know what? You probably can. You're rocking $190 million payroll, and you got some studs. If you don't have that, your margin of error is very slim. And Shelton almost shrugged it off as, we're doing all those things, it's just not happening for us. And that's just not the truth.
The last thing I wanted to talk about, at least that I had on my head, you're certainly willing to bring one up and I'll take it, but this stretch of bad games, I think, has been the most consistent stretch of lineups that Derek Shelton has ever produced. He always skips the lineup all around with different members jumping in and out. He has really, really had a very consistent lineup since the trade deadline and everybody got healthy there. It has not worked. It hasn't worked at all. Like, there has to be some kind of change to that lineup, right? I mean, like, the thing is, it's not even like that I want the guys that are on the bench. That's not what I'm even saying. But like, do something to the order, move them around or something. I don't care if you just do it a completely inverse of what makes sense, just to change something. It looks so tired right now. Nobody is feeding into the next guy. I don't even, they can't get 2 guys taking good swings together at the same time, like, no matter what they're doing. I don't know what to do except for to say the coach has to help break them out of it, man. Like, yeah, it can't just go on and on and on.
It's funny how that works out sometimes. I think too, like, Look, the Brian De La Cruz thing has been really, really rough. And they've plugged him in essentially into the cleanup spot since he's been here. And
it's crazy
when your only hitters are batting in the top of the lineup, and then you've got him there, and he's done nothing essentially except for a few singles. That's going to be a disaster. So, I don't know what they thought they were going to get in him. Getting him, he's a little streaky. Maybe they thought they were just going to catch him on a heater. It's been a negative heater, to say the least.
Yeah, and then we're gonna have a long time to talk about the off season, but I do think it is important to just look at this roster and really, really realize how much of it is definitely going to be here next year. I don't think there's an awful lot of Brian Reynolds is going to be here. Brian Hayes. I really think Brian De La Cruz probably will be. They didn't get a guy with years of control to just jettison him.
Well, it's on top of it. Are they in a position to say, well, he's going to be holding someone up? He's not.
Yeah.
So
O'Neill Cruz, Nick Gonzalez, Andy Rodriguez, Henry's probably going to be here. Joey Bart, good starting rotation, decent amount of bullpen arms that I think we're going to wind up going back to trying to trust. And then they're going to have to go out and fill in those holes better than they did this year. That's the thing. It's the same holes.
Players.
It's the same holes.
Right.
That's the disappointing thing of this year besides the record. They didn't end up answering any of these questions. And they didn't even try to because they went out and signed a Rowdy Tellez and went and made a trade for another project outfielder.
Yeah. And quite honestly, with Rowdy, we touched on it. I'm really curious to see how he ends the rest of the way, because I'm not completely all about that either. Yes, he's been a much better player, but it hasn't been what they've envisioned. And I don't know what the last 40-some games are going to look like for him. I don't know what David Bednar's going to look like next year either. So there's just so many things that if this GM doesn't learn to start being more aggressive with trades, and if there is any money to spend, you better do it.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at, man. I don't know. Do you have time to hang out for just a couple minutes?
Yeah.
Let's do call your shot then.
Okay.
All right, this week, call your shot is our friend Tom724, a bunch of numbers. And he says, here's a question for this week. It's easy to forget that Cruz is in his first full season in the majors. Does he have a mentor to help him on learning to be a pro and maintain his focus? I love the question. And we should also say this is brought to you by our friends at Shop Yins. Visit shopyins.com and check out all their Yinsery stuff, including our merch. So, Jim, what do you think of that question, man? Does he have a mentor? Did they just get him one with IKF? Feels like it's been Rowdy this year.
Yeah, I mean, look, a guy like IKF can help, right? Because he's one of those do all the little things right and do it right every time. And you hope some of that rubs off on him. But I think at the end of the day, with a guy like O'Neill Cruz he's just got to learn that he has to hold himself accountable. He has to, the things of hitting a single or hitting a double and not hustling out of the box and then getting thrown out at second, that's on you, big guy. That's nobody else's fault. Nobody at this level should have to tell you that. Catch the ball at second base on a double play.
Errors are going to happen.
They are.
I just think
Especially
it's when you see him like when he has time and he purposefully like winds up and throws it as hard as he can, and then it's offline. Those are the ones that you're like, why? Why do you have to do that? Like, because everything else is so good, and or like
you're so defeated when you said that.
well, because like this kid has all the potential in the world.
Sure.
I really feel that way. I accept that he's going to make some errors. I also accept that he's going to make some plays that others can't. And I don't know how long he can do it. He's 25 already. I would say if he's still doing it when he's 28 at shortstop, I'd be shocked. The throws, though, that's got to stop being an adventure. It has to. I mean, I'll take the one less out a month that it helps with, if you just like will get the outs you're supposed to.
I think what's maddening about him is like it's never really like one thing. Like he's either not focused enough or trying to do too much at other times. Like, and that's an odd combination because like the people that say, "Oh, I don't think he cares," I think he cares a ton. I just don't know how you hone it into going. I mean, like, just meet in the middle somewhere, dude. Like, don't run over your left fielder trying to catch a ball, but please catch the ball at second base and run and hustle out of the box.
He cares. He cares quite a bit. It's not that. It's more.
All these dudes do.
I just think like in the infield, especially, I think there are times when the game gets too fast for him, and I really just think he gets carried away with some things he thinks he can pull off. I've seen like Gunnar Henderson do the same thing. I think Gunnar Henderson grew out of that real quick. I mean, he was a lot worse at that when he was younger, and he very quickly got rid of that. I mean, like, and maybe he had a coach telling him like, "You ain't gonna be shortstop for long, son." Maybe that's what you got to do. Maybe you got to quit just saying, "Oh, it'll get better. Oh, I'll get better." I want to be patient, but you're getting into the years where that kid starts making money, and you got to know whether you want to sign him or not. And I can't sit here and tell you I want to sign him or not based on what I've seen.
Yeah.
I really mean that.
I agree. I don't know what internally as they sit and watch him go through these things, if they think it's something that's going to work itself out with him. I think what ends up happening with guys like Oneil Cruz and to an extent Ellie, they're so naturally physically gifted athletically that they get away with this stuff. They've gotten away with this stuff their whole lives, right? Like, you don't have to necessarily be a complete technician on everything you do when your athleticism is so good. And
well, everybody wants accountability.
Played a whole career that way.
Everybody wants accountability with Oneil Cruz, and what does that look like? Because on a baseball field, there's only a couple ways to do that. You can demote them. Not going to do that. You can bench him, and then you end up starting Jared Triolo. So, I mean, your lineup isn't scoring runs. You've lost now 10 in a row. What does that say to a fan base if I'm benching him right then? I don't know. I'm literally just saying I don't know. Do you pull him and say, "Hey, you're going to DH"? I'm not trying to say what's right here. I'm trying to just say, this isn't necessarily a guy I can just easily pull out of my lineup that isn't hitting right now.
Yeah, I think this next 40 games, I think most people, and I would hope people even that are big, like, look, Cruz has his opponents, but he also has people that love him and see no wrong with what he does. I would say this, down this stretch, this is the time where if he decides I'm not going to hustle out of the box on something, I wouldn't mind them saying, you know what, you're going to go sit for a game.
But right then and there is when you do it. That's when you pull him out of the game.
Absolutely.
You're not the next, because you're not you're not teaching anything otherwise. Like, you pull them right then and there.
Absolutely.
And like, if you're gonna do it,
and then after the game you're asked about it, you have to be able to say as a manager, it doesn't matter who it is. Those are things we cannot do. We cannot get away with those types of effort from anyone.
You don't even have to directly call them out. Somebody can ask you the question directly, and you just go, there's things that we don't want to see on a baseball field.
They don't
accept. Leave it right there.
Sure.
And that's it. And you don't need to know what was said to who. It doesn't need to last 3 or 4 games, but you have to do something. You have to do something. When they're mental errors, when they're physical errors, you accept them. I'm sorry. Missing the ball the other day because he was looking to make the throw to first. That's a mental error. You're getting ahead of yourself, and this game has sped up on you. That's the kind of things that you can help a guy out of. When it's like, I want to showboat and show how fast I can throw it, I'd have him sitting immediately.
I think it's an excellent time to send messages. And it doesn't even have to be O'Neill Cruz, whoever it is. If it's seen as something that is not up to standard, these are the times where you have to call that out. So I don't necessarily, everybody's real caught up in wins and losses the rest of the way, Gary. I just need to see that there's some kind of an expectation to finish things out the right way.
Well, for me, that comes with caring about wins and losses.
Well, okay.
If you want to play the right way, it should, with the team that you are going to return a whole bunch of next year, it should be able to produce enough wins to put this team over 500. If not, you, Mr. GM, have some questions to answer. Is my coach good enough? Do I believe in my talent? If I believe in my talent, then my coaching did not do what it was supposed to do with my talent. If I didn't give him enough talent, and I know I didn't give him enough talent, then I'm going to go, I can't fire him because it's my fault. If I'm a good person. That's all I'm saying. I'm not claiming that all GMs are. I'm just saying that's the way I think it has to work. If he thinks he's given this team a real legit shot at just getting past 500, which would be competitive to them, let's say, as the bottom level. I think he thinks he did. So to me, if they don't make it, that is squarely on Shelton. I move on. I put this challenge out there that I want 500 if I'm them. Yeah, I make this their playoffs.
And I say,
tell me what you got.
And I say that with also too, like, wins and losses. As long as we're not sitting here in 2 weeks from now and they're still on a losing streak, like the bottom has fallen out, but I don't want it to turn into the Grand Canyon type of bottom either. So,
right.
Right.
Anyways, we should wrap it up.
Did we fix everything?
No, but that's what happens when you take a couple weeks off from reality and just have baseball fun. But we had to step back in. We will definitely do more of it next week. Their play will tell us whether we're talking about the off season or the current season. But I'm probably not going to spend every single week complaining about the same things. I think we've told you what we think about the coach and the GM, and I don't expect to see that change in a week.
And tell us what you want to see down this stretch.
Yeah.
The last 40-some games. What's important to you? What do you think should be important to them? I mean, the feedback, I want to hear it.
That's what I want to know. Go young or 500 or bust. I think those are the two options on the table that we kind of put forward. So let's pick which one and move on, right? Let us know in the comments which one of those you'd go with. We'll talk about it a little bit next week. Maybe Jim will throw up a poll if he's feeling froggy.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Ben, take it away.
Let's go, Bucks!
Yeah, buddy. See you, everybody.